You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I'm joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. So, a little bummed the Avalanche got knocked out of the Lord Stanley's Cup playoffs.
We'll always have 21.
Yeah, and the team just wasn't as good as last year. Clearly, they were missing some key pieces, injuries, poor power play results, and an untimely one-game suspension from Cale Makar. But nevertheless, here we are. The Nuggets are up 2-0. For those of you who care about basketball, I sadly do not. But hey, a little thing called the NFL Draft was this past weekend, and that was a kick in the pants. And so now we focus on to rookie rankings, rookie dynasty drafts, all the things that kind of fill our time here right now until we start getting into rookie mini camp, OTAs and rookie mini camp and mandatory mini camp and preseason football. So we're well on our way here. And not to mention summer's here. So we get to play a lot of golf, and golf is good. So how are you guys doing?
I'll tell you what, this weekend is going to be kind of a fun one, right? First Saturday in May, right? Churchill Downs, Kentucky Derby. Always fun to see the ponies racing out there. And speaking of racing, F1 will be in the U.S. They're in Miami this weekend, so that'll be fun to see them. One of 3 stops that they're making in the U.S. this year. So that'll be kind of fun. And May obviously kicks off Indianapolis Motor Speedway month, as they've made it now. They're going to have a couple races there, culminating with the Indy 500, which I don't know if you guys are into racing. The Daytona 500 still means something, I think, to a lot of people. It may not mean a lot to a lot of the laymen, but it still means something to NASCAR folks. The Indy 500 means a lot to a lot of people as well, even though it may have lost some of its luster. I think in terms of open wheel, that's the one that everybody wants to have. So it's a very exciting time. I'm just trying to fill the void of my Knights being freed up now with the Avs having made their exit from the playoffs. Don't get me started on the Department of Player Safety. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get started on the Department of Player Safety. How do you break a guy's neck and not get a game suspension? I don't understand it.
Yeah, if you put those two hits side by side, and I understand that there's a little bit of context that might need to be had, but how Makar gets suspended for a game and
Eberle does not.
Like it. I don't know. It just, that one doesn't sit right. If it would have been a game and everything was even, so be it. But truth be told, Eberle didn't do squat in Game 7 anyway. Like that wasn't really a factor. That was not impacted by him so much. It was more
losing Cogliano did hurt. Losing Cogliano did hurt the Avalanche.
Yes, his whole 2 points in the series were a massive loss to the Avalanche.
It's not so much his point production. It is it's the little things that he did that changed momentum. But yes, he wasn't out there to score points. He was out there to do the dirty work.
No one was out there to score points.
If your name wasn't McKinnon, Makar, or Rantanen, yes, you were not out there to score points. So let's move on. We still have 21. We still have 2021. The Rockies are probably already eliminated from playoff contention. And I'll tell you what, I just saw a video of Aaron Rodgers taking snaps in Jets green. And that was kind of weird. That was kind of weird, right?
Well, especially seeing Aaron Rodgers play football this early in the year. Yeah, that's very strange. But
he's got to teach his teammates Nathaniel Hackett's offense.
Right?
And that's the good thing, right? Like Rodgers in general, like I think that's part of the reason, right? It's kind of what the Broncos thought last year when they hired Hackett to be the head coach is you have this quarterback come in who understands all the ins and outs.
Yeah.
And now you can use him as a player coach and get everybody up to speed as he finds his new favorite weapons, right? Many think it's going to be Garrett Wilson. Some argue it's Alan Lazard, and that's why he came over. Some say, Miko Hardman's going to be way more productive than what he was with
Mahomes.
But Patrick Mahomes, like, who knows? I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But for years during team breakdowns, right, we laughed when we had to cover the Jets and just kind of cringed like this episode's going to be brutal, right? This is tough, getting hyped up about the Jets. Last year was a little bit better, right? They had Breece Hall, they had Garrett Wilson. Like, if Zach Wilson can make that step, and now you had Aaron Rodgers into the fold. This is an offense, guys. Like, I don't know that they're going to light the world on fire, but it's a top 15 offense,
right?
Like, there is absolute fantasy relevance in multiple positions in this offense now. So, I mean, we got something to talk about with the Jets.
Yeah, the interesting thing that will be there too, right? Like, you got to love Jets fans, because immediately after that trade went through, all that, you started seeing a lot of things come out that the Jets are winning the division. They're a shoe-in. They've gone all in for the deal. I don't know that the Jets win that division. That's going to be a tough division to win.
Look, Miami's vastly improved, right? Like,
right.
That's a good squad down there. Mike McDaniel has them playing well. You can never count out Bill and the Patriots.
I think you need to be careful. Like, this division might cannibalize themselves.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, we had the AFC East last year with 3 teams getting to the playoffs, and it came down to the wire whether the Commanders were going to actually be able to get in or not. In the last 3 weeks of the season, that kind of faded out. But I mean, this division, they might only get 2 and should be deserving of 3 possibly, right? We'll see how this plays out. But this division, or since Brady left, this division's had a little bit more parity. Yes, the Bills have been able to win it. But I do think that the rest of these teams are slowly rebuilding, and I think it's going to be a really fun race for the division in the AFC East. Like, the teams are not, right? I mean, us being from a flyover state as far as a lot of the Northeastern folk are concerned, it's fun as a football fan to an extent, but as a person, I don't want to care about the AFC East, but it's football, so I do care about them. Like, there you go.
Which one do you think is more wide open as we sit and talk right now? The AFC East or the NFC East?
Well, the NFC East.
The NFC East is Philly.
Yeah.
Holy crap, is it Philadelphia? I mean,
that's fair. That's
building
fair.
on what
Very
they did
fair.
last year, their draft just smashed, getting another running back.
Oh, did their draft just smash?
Speaking of which, when does all your Eagles gear get in? Like,
On its way. I shot you guys that
yes.
logo.
Yes.
I've seen a couple different logos in some Georgia fan pages that I'm a part of, and there's been some really creative people coming up with some different ones. I'm like, man, I don't know which. I'm like, man, I might have to have my wife make me a couple of different T-shirts just with like that blended Eagles Bulldogs logo and wear them.
Philly Dogs, man.
Yeah,
Philly
man.
Dogs.
Like, what a crazy.
Just a pipeline. You might as well, like, if you are a draftable player in Georgia, start looking up your favorite restaurants in Philly, because.
But we talked about this, right? Like,
Yep.
This isn't a surprise, or shouldn't be a surprise for anyone who listens to us, of what Howie Roseman and the Eagles organization feel and think about players coming out of the University of Georgia. We heard them talk it up unsolicited numerous times last year. And then all of a sudden it went really quiet during the draft. It's like, well, duh, right? I mean, for lack of a better word, duh. And then they go out and talk about it after the fact, like, and the reports and the comments that they've made after about how they love these players and how they come in and they're conditioned and trained to think and study and practice and compete the right way to make themselves and the people better around them. So much to the point that Roseman was joking around and saying that, he's going to get
he's going to have to give up,
right?
Yeah,
and
he's going to have to give up his alumni status.
Florida's going to make him give up his alumni stats. Like, I thought that was funny. Like, he's playing with it a little bit, but seriously, it made sense. The Swift thing, I don't know that anybody saw coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, made sense after the deal, especially for the Lions. It made sense after the deal. Both teams kind of need a fresh start. Swift needs to be healthy, yada, yada, yada. But for them to bring in another guy, but I mean, what 5? They have 5 players over the last 2 national championship teams that are going to be playing for their defense. Like that means mentally you're conditioned to be a champion. Like what it's an interesting way, but what a great way for that team to continue to build a defense and honestly flip a fan base. I think half the people in Georgia are now Eagles fans, A, because the Falcons suck, and B, because all their hometown favorites are all playing for the same team, so it makes it easy to root for. Like, it's just really cool. It's a really cool story.
Yeah, it was. It was always a lot of fun, right? So that was one of the big draft reaction. What were some of the other kind of standout moments for you from the draft?
The Will Levis slide, right?
Yep.
I think that was interesting, and I think it's getting blown up a little bit too much, right? Like, we all kind of had an idea that unless a team was willing to give up the capital, once it got to pick like 17, he wasn't going to go in the first round. Like a team would have to jump up. So past Tennessee, right? Once it passed Tennessee and they took
which was at 11.
Goronsky.
That was 11.
Right. Yeah. It got really thin and you weren't quite sure. I had the Vikings taking a shot on him later in the first round. Jordan Addison fell into their lap to pair up with Jordan Jefferson. Again, that made sense, right? To try and capitalize while the iron's hot there offensively. And there you go. But, the 33rd pick overall. The 33rd pick overall. And if it would have fallen, I think if the draft would have fallen a couple of different ways, I think Tennessee might have tried to trade up back into that back end of the first round. Or maybe they did, right? Like, there's rumors that the Chiefs were really contemplating trading that pick. The Eagles, I think they were dead set on Nolan Smith, but had he been gone, would they have traded that pick, right? Would they have traded out of the first round had their guy not been there? So part of that is what it is, but you know what? It costs them a little bit of money, but you go out, you compete, you prove yourself, and guess what? Your second contract makes up for what you didn't make on the first one.
Right.
So he's in,
especially as a quarterback.
Yes. So he's in the situation a lot of us thought he would be in. They're in Tennessee. Tennessee got their guy. And once the deal with Kansas City or Philly or whoever didn't come to fruition, Tennessee knew that they could sit tight. Like, there was no longer a push other than that 5th-year option.
Right.
And you knew Pittsburgh wasn't trading out at 32.
No, and there was no point, right? There's no point to swap those picks. Like, then you're just giving up unnecessary capital. So, that worked out well. He's where he should be. I think he's a competitor, right? He'll go in and try and do the things that he needs to do to get acclimated to the game, easily unseat Malik Willis and maybe try and push Ryan Tannehill a little bit in some aspects as the Titans revamp their team here a little bit. But other than that, I think maybe we were expecting another tight end or two to go in the first round that didn't go. Jahmyr Gibbs going so high to the Lions, I think was one that kind of all had us on tilt here for a little bit. And then, you had
but then you see the Swift deal and you're like, oh, okay. It kind of makes sense, right? Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Well, it was one of those, especially after they took Gibbs, Swift became an option to move on from, because Gibbs and Swift have very similar pass catching skill sets out of the backfield there.
Yes.
And so, so much so to the point, right? Like when Swift got drafted, we were talking about the point that, he could potentially even move into a slot type of role and play some slot receiver at times during different sets, and you could scheme things that way. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs has a lot of that similar skill set where he could, he's an undersized running back for the most part, right? A little bit smaller guy in that sense, but he also could slide out there into like a slot type of receiver and take some snaps out there in the slot type of thing and do some of that.
The injury history that Swift has.
Correct.
Right? Like he hasn't been nicked up and missed that time. And you're able to get fair compensation for DeAndre Swift and get a almost identical player, younger, less mileage, cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're off to the races. So, a lot of the first round made sense. I didn't find myself scratching my head too much. I thought the Cowboys pick was a little interesting, taking the D end out of Michigan. I was thinking they'd go offensive line there, possibly even wide receiver, but at that point the run had kind of passed and those top receivers were off the board, so that made a little sense.
Tight end was a pick I really thought that they would have gone either a guard position, Cyrus Torrance type of deal there, or like a Michael Mayer still on the board. Like that one was either one of those guys would have been guys I would have chalked into that over defensive.
Yeah, so I thought the first round went well. I was happy with it. Those of you who missed the show, it was a fast. I was talking to Derek about this afterwards. It was a fast 4.5 hour show. And that sounds crazy, but we had a great group of guests. So thank you to everyone who came on and shot the breeze with us back and forth and had your takes heard and everything else. We appreciate you guys and your time in the matter. But I thought it was a great time. I had so much fun with everybody. I'm happy that my boy Stetson Bennett went in the 4th round like I called it. Yes. I even like his landing spot. I really like his landing spot with the Rams. McVay and Sean Payton are probably the two guys I thought could do the most with Stetson Bennett. It made more sense for the Rams, given that Stafford was contemplating retirement, even because of the back issues and the neck issues and everything else. So, I think it'd be a bridge. I'm not sure if it's the long-term answer, right? Like Bennett will still have to kind of have that chip on his shoulder and overcome, being overlooked and second guessed and everything else. But his track record year to date does speak for itself. The dude is a competitor and he will fight like crazy to be the best version of himself on the field.
Hey, did you guys see, I just saw it floating around social media the last day or so, Deuce Vaughn's dad calling, Deuce Vaughn's dad is a scout for the Cowboys, and they put together a little video. It was more than just him calling and saying, "Hey, do you want to come to work with me on Monday?" Which was great, and that's awesome. But they showed a video of his dad walking around, and apologies, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but dad's walking around and he's talking to Deuce, and he's like, "Hey, don't worry, this, it's gonna happen, everybody there is super proud of you," because I think Deuce Vaughn was starting to slip a little bit from where the kind of projections were. And how cool is that dad gets to call his son and say, "Hey, my employer is going to draft you." It's just so cool. And there's stories like that all over the place. And then you get the guys that thought they were going to hear their name and they didn't get to hear their name. And those guys will go on and now they have something to prove when they get to minicamp to try and make a roster. So there's a lot of fun stuff that comes out of the NFL draft, not just for the people that hear their name, but the other guys too, that get the UDFAs or the I'd say preferred walk-on, but the tryouts that they go to try and keep their dream going.
Yeah. So two quick things, and then I'll be done here. Number one, shame on ESPN and NFL Network for stealing my bit, because as the screen went live to the Cowboys draft room,
yes,
I said there, that looked like the Death Star. And now all of a sudden ESPN and NFL Network and all these, look at these side-by-side memes. Screw you guys. I said that live. You guys are stealing my content, and your creative people are hacks. Now.
I'm not expecting us to get a call from either one of those now with the contract for us to do this show live now.
Yeah, all will be forgiven for a sum, and I will let you guys determine what that sum might be. I think that's what I had two, and I got on that rant, and now there's only one, so I apologize. If I think of it, I'll blurt out in the middle of our show.
There you go. So, no, but you're right. It was absolutely a lot of fun being live with you guys, and all of our guests that we had on draft night there for the first round. And Yeah, you're right. Like when you and I were talking afterwards, like it was an incredibly fast 4.5 hours. Most of the time when we get on and we do some of these longer episodes and you get into hour 2, hour 3, hour 4, by the time you kind of get done with it, you just feel kind of run over a little bit, like just exhausted. And that was not the case. Like that was an incredibly fun night. And again, thank you to everybody that came on with us and hung out and gave their takes and all of that. It was very, very enjoyable for, I think, everybody concerned there. So,
I'll add one more thing. And I think
right.
the reason why the first round went so fast, and likely, I mean, granted, a lot of these teams, they stuck to their time, right? Like that was kind of nice that we weren't having to sit and wait for TV to catch up and for Goodell to walk out. Like they kind of kept to their time, which was great. But the amount of action that took place, in that first round, in terms of trades, in terms of, other teams swooping in and teams making their picks quickly and all that stuff. So I do think a kudos to, the NFL and the production, I guess, for keeping it moving, even with all the trades and things that happen, of which I think is great. And, the thing that I said going into it was, I thought chaos would reign, and it kind of did. There were 43 trades in the draft this year, which set a new record for draft picks and trades of in the draft. So I'm all here for that. Like that's legitimately, that is real life fantasy football, right? Like you go into it and you're just trading stuff for the sake of trading it, right? Like sometimes in fantasy football, you're just making trades, and it seems like a lot of these GMs now are taking a page out of the fantasy player's book.
Well, and you do have to wonder how much of that is, the fact that, you've got to. There was actually a really good video out there, a little while back, showcasing like Jimmy Johnson and the Herschel Walker trade and how that kind of came to be, and then all of the subsequent draft picks that came from that. Because they got all these players, but the rules were such that when they cut a player, they actually turned it into a draft pick going forward on that. And it was one of those that Jimmy Johnson, the Cowboys traded Herschel Walker, which was a monumental deal back then, and then got all these draft picks and then moved the draft picks to either get other draft picks. Like they just didn't sit still, and really kind of before that time frame. You really didn't see many trades happen in the NFL, and you certainly didn't see draft picks move around like that. So, absolutely. And it's very fun to see, see these guys kind of go through and basically bust out their charts and go, okay, here's the trade compensation value for that, and how quickly they get some of these deals done and with such fluidity that it seems as well. So it was a lot of fun to see.
Proves when they want to, they can move quickly.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Very true. Alrighty. Well, guys, we've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to hit up some rapid fire reactions and all around landing spots on that. We're going to get into a mock draft, little 3-round rookie super flex type of mock draft there. But before we do that, make sure that you're following us on all of the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF. And, head over to that YouTube channel. Click that subscribe button. Help us out there on our march to 1,000 subscribers. YouTube.com/@goodoldboysff. Click that subscribe button. Gator Jay chiming in here. What's up, fellas? What was your biggest surprise of the draft? Again, I think we mentioned it earlier, but Jahmyr Gibbs was certainly mine.
I don't know if it was my biggest surprise. Honestly, Houston trading back up to get Anderson.
Houston getting that
massive.
Third.
And absolutely massive. Like credit. I did not see that coming out of anywhere. And for them to jump back up and get CJ Stroud and then Will Anderson, kudos to the Houston Texans for trying to revitalize and re-energize this fan base with a new regime.
Daniel Jeremiah called that the night before, which is insane. Like that's a hero call, right? And it it's what happened. So that's wild. I think we all kind of thought that Arizona was going to trade that pick, right? Arizona didn't need to pick there. They could get whatever they needed later on. But I did not expect Houston to be one of the suitors for that spot. So that was definitely crazy.
And it made it to a point where it only happened like 2 times before, I believe, where you had a singular team picking twice in the top 3 picks. Houston pulled that off. You had the Washington right around 2000, and then another team in the early 90s pull that one off there. So it doesn't happen very often. But also, Houston kind of the master of the smoke screen out there, right? Like, you read a lot of those reports, and they started it early, right? About the CJ Stroud and, it's Bryce Young or bust for them kind of thing at that deal. And they just kind of kept that rolling to the point where, nobody really going into that, nobody knew what Houston was going to do with that number 2 pick. Was it going to be CJ Stroud or Bryce Young if it fell? Was it going to be a Will Anderson or a Tyree Wilson or, Jalen Carter even? Like, who was it going to be? A lot of intrigue there at number 2 that really kind of set the rest of the draft up for, as Alex has said more than once, chaos.
Yeah. One more that I'll add on to it, and we'll talk about this guy a little bit later. I think we're going to talk about him a lot, actually, as the offseason moves on. But I did not anticipate Atlanta going for Bijan Robinson. I didn't think that they would be in that mood. I thought that they were probably doing okay with what they need, and they had other needs that they really needed addressing. But I think you add the guy, and you get the guy that you think can help you the quickest. And I think Bijan Robinson probably does that for Atlanta. He can hide a lot of flaws. Hopefully, you got to get that line to open up some holes for him, but he can hide a lot of flaws, especially with a quarterback that you need to kind of work along a little bit. It's a lot easier when you have an option to just turn and hand the ball off.
True. Although, Tyler Algier, you're talking about that offensive line. Tyler Algier had an excellent rookie season last year for him.
Right.
So even a little bit more surprising, you had a running back on the cheap that was highly productive for you.
Right. And it wasn't like, his name is escaping me at the moment. Patterson.
Cordell.
Thank you. It wasn't like he was a slouch either when he was healthy, right? Like he was able to make some hay too. So it's like not a horrible situation for Bijan Robinson to walk into, but it certainly helps take some pressure off of Desmond Ridder when you're trying to bring along a young quarterback and give him a little bit more time to develop, because you don't have to worry about him getting killed when you can turn around and hand the ball off to a guy who realistically needs, right, 25 touches out of your 65 or so plays that you're going to call in any given Sunday. Like that helps a lot. That takes a lot of burden off of a young quarterback.
Right. And you think about this too. Atlanta has now spent top 10 draft capital on a skill position in the last 3 drafts, right? You had Drake London last year, Kyle Pitts the year before, and Bijan on Thursday night there. So 3 very highly picked draft picks here at skill position. So it will be very, very interesting.
No.
Gator Jay saying that Atlanta had 400 plus carries. Algier will still get 180 carries. He might. I mean, this is an offensive scheme and a head coach that had no problem saddling Derrick Henry up for 370 carries in a season. So, you went out, you spent a top 10 draft pick on that, run the wheels off of him, and I think that's what they're going to do down there in Atlanta, right? Like, yeah. And if you've got a highly touted running back like that, that's where it does make sense to maybe take him in the first round. You get the 4 years, you pick up that 5th year option, and you see kind of what's left. But 5 years is kind of the shelf life of any running back on their productivity side of things.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on that one? We ready to start hitting some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Okay. Real quick before we get there, and it's just going to be yes or no. Do y'all, because we're going to go through, this gentleman is in our rapid fire. So do y'all feel that Anthony Richardson got the best landing spot?
No.
Yeah, I do, as far as where the quarterbacks went, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could argue Stroud for the same reason, and that division is pretty weak, right? Like the Colts struggling, the Texans rebuilding, Tennessee kind of falling apart, and Jacksonville, they're trying to emerge, right? I mean, definitely made it exciting in that game against the Chargers in the playoffs, and Trevor Lawrence kind of coming to be. But that division might be the most up in the open or up in the air as far as who's going to win. I think arguably the NFC and AFC South both are kind of in that situation because the NFC South is not very good either. But I'm good with where Richardson went. I really am. Like, you have Jonathan Taylor there. You can do some creative things in the run game. It's not the best wide receiving core, but with Michael Pittman and
Alec Pierce, and they also just drafted Josh Downs.
Yeah, you got Downs there now. Like, they definitely need an upgraded tight end. Still, their defense needs to get a little bit younger. They're kind of starting to get a little bit long in the tooth, and the offensive line last year was nowhere near what it was 2 years ago, right? So it's not without challenges. But I like the coaching staff in Indianapolis. I like the fact that they want to get him out and see what he has. Like, it'll be interesting. And for fantasy purposes, I think he's going to lead all rookies in fantasy points. Playing the quarterback position, right? I mean, so
Yeah.
Bijan might make a strong push for total fantasy points once all said and done with, but I do think because of Richardson's ability to use his legs, he's going to edge him out as far as total fantasy points.
I like it. All righty, so we're going to run through rapid fire here. You got 10 players to give your reactions to landing spots, and you can take it as either a dynasty or a redraft type of approach here. We are in dynasty season, though. I will just remind us of all that. So 3 minutes to rock through 10 players here. And Alex, why don't you go ahead and lead us off here on this one? So you got 3 minutes, and go ahead and rock and roll, my friend.
All right, Bryce Young is my first up. Bryce Young goes to Carolina. I like this deal. I like Bryce Young going to Carolina. I don't like it this year. So for dynasty purposes, I think he's a grab and stash. For redraft purposes, I think he's a break glass in case of emergency. Will Levis going to Tennessee? Again, yes, I like this. I like Will Levis going to Tennessee, not this year. He's behind Ryan Tannehill. He's behind Malik Willis. It is for dynasty purposes, grab and stash. For redraft purposes, nah. Bijan Robinson going to ATL. Who was that wrestler? Yes. That's what I like that.
Daniel Bryan.
Thank you. Daniel Bryan. I'm all in on Bijan Robinson going to Atlanta. I think it's a can't miss, either in redraft or in dynasty. I love Bijan Robinson going to Atlanta. Devon Achane going to Miami. Yes, maybe not so much early on. So build a roster that you can rely on and get you through the first half of the season. I think he finds his way in the second half of the season, but he does become serviceable. I'm not sure that he's a superstar. There's a lot of mouths to feed down there in Miami, and get your stopwatch out because Miami will fly past you in the blink of an eye with all of the speed that they have acquired down there in South Florida. Tank Bigsby going to Jacksonville. Head scratcher, right? Travis Etienne's there. Trevor Lawrence is obviously going to throw the football. Not so sure I'm in on this one. This is a wait and see for me. And honestly, I'm more of a wait than see. Zach Evans goes to the LA Rams. You know, there were times where we thought that you wanted a piece of the Rams offense. I'm not so sure that you want a piece of the Rams offense right now, as they've got issues that they have to figure out. But I don't want any part of Zach Evans. Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Seattle. Yes, I'm in on Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Seattle, but he needs to be able to find his footing. They've got to figure out a way to work that three-headed monster into some sort of semblance where JSN can get his, right? You're dealing with a Tyler Lockett. You're dealing with a DK Metcalf. I like the landing spot there. I think it will be productive. Can Geno Smith figure out a way to get him involved? That's going to be the question. I think he's worth drafting in redraft, and I think he's definitely worth snagging in a dynasty if you can get him in the right spot. I don't know that it's worth reaching on that. Zay Flowers going to Baltimore. No. Unless Lamar is a completely different person with this new contract, I don't like it. And I feel bad for Zay Flowers because I think that he would have been a playmaker in this league. For me, I'm out on Zay Flowers. Josh Downs goes to Indianapolis. I think this is going to be tough for Josh Downs. I think it's going to be tough with Richardson because I think he's going to be a one read and tuck quarterback, at least this rookie year. So there's a lot of mouths to feed there in Indianapolis as well. And so I'm not too high on Josh Downs. I think if you're going to get a piece of the Indianapolis offense, it's Anthony Richardson. His receivers, I think it's going to be hit and miss. And I think there's going to be more misses than hits. Luke Musgrave goes to Green Bay. Jordan Love is not a young quarterback, but he's still an inexperienced quarterback when it comes to playing meaningful snaps in the NFL. So I've said this time and time again, a good pass-catching tight end is a very good security blanket for a young developing quarterback. If he can build a rapport with Jordan Love, I like Luke Musgrave in Green Bay. I don't know that it works out necessarily this year. I think it takes time. We all know that it takes time for these tight ends to get where they need to be in terms of NFL readiness. It's the position that takes the longest to develop, right? So I'm not 100%. There are other tight ends that I would look at, but for Dynasty, he's worth a stash, a grab and stash.
I like it. Kevin, let's keep that ball rolling. You were up with your rapid fire on your 10 guys.
Right on. First up, CJ Stroud. I love the pick to the Houston Texans. I thought he was the best quarterback in this class as far as natural throwing ability and mechanics. Obviously, kind of had that negative smoke screen that could have possibly cost him the first overall pick. But overall, I like the home in Houston. He's going to be their day one starter. I don't think Davis Mills poses any sort of threat to that. That being said, I think he's going to, he's probably going to be QB 25 this year. Like, he's going to have some bumps and bruises and learning curves. So serviceable possibly in a 2-quarterback league, definitely an emergency style quarterback if you get real down and dirty. For dynasty purposes, anywhere in the top 3, right? I think your Bijan, I think Richardson, and I think CJ Stroud are kind of my top 3 in that order as far as dynasty rankings go. And we'll see how he performs in Houston. Stetson Bennett going in the 4th round to the LA Rams. I touched on him a little bit earlier here in the show. I like this landing spot for him. I like the fact that he can go in, he can learn for 2 years in a McVay offense behind a fellow Georgia alum, and that does mean something. There's an instant connection between those 2 quarterbacks that it will make it easier for Matt Stafford and Stetson Bennett to bond. They already know each other because Stafford goes back to Athens so much, but now they get to work together. I think that'll be a big benefit as Stetson Bennett tries to prove doubters wrong yet again, and maybe one day find himself the starting quarterback of an NFL franchise. Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the big surprises in the draft with how early he went. But I like this spot in Detroit. So you have David Montgomery kind of being your thumper, filling that Jamal Williams type role for the team. Jahmyr Gibbs is DeAndre Swift, but younger and more dynamic at this point. So lots of catches. I really like him in a PPR league. He will have fantasy relevance right away, which is always a good thing. So I think he's going to be one of those guys that you could probably pick up in the 4th, maybe 5th round. We'll see as we get closer into draft season. But I like Gibbs, and I like his setting there in Detroit. Kendre Miller, who went to New Orleans. this one's interesting, guys. Like this one is, he could have some really, really big upside if Alvin Kamara and these legal troubles don't go away, or if Alvin Kamara is suspended, right? I mean, so right now, as the roster sits, he's third on the depth chart, right? It's AK, Jamal Williams, and then Miller. But if AK misses time, Miller comes to be that second back in a two-back system there in New Orleans and does provide fantasy value and good roster depth come draft day. Tajay Spears going to Tennessee. I like this one. I like this one quite a bit, as I think Tennessee's going to manage Henry's workload more this season than what we've seen going forward. Spears showed that he could carry the rock, that he could work on all three downs to some point in college. His biggest learning curve, much like all rookie running backs, is going to be pass protection. Like, is he going to be able to help out on third down, or is it going to be a dead giveaway that if he's in on third down, they're throwing the ball and he's just going to scamper out of the backfield? Dwayne McBride going to the Minnesota Vikings. This, much like Miller, is intriguing because there are rumors that Dalvin Cook could be cut by the Minnesota Vikings. And if he is, I do think that you see Dwayne McBride kind of step up and quite possibly be that number 2 running back behind Alexander Mattison. So another guy who's worth a flyer late in rookie drafts or even late in redraft leagues if you have deep benches, to be able to kind of suck him up and get a piece of what should be a pretty high-powered offense yet again this season. Quentin Johnston going to the Chargers. I like this. I don't know that I love it for this year, right? And a lot of it's health dependent. Can Keenan Allen stay healthy? Can Mike Williams stay healthy? What does this offense look like with Kellen Moore? Is Austin Eckler going to be part of this team still? There are a lot of questions around the Chargers, but Quentin Johnston, I think, is a guy that come next year we are going to like a lot more as some of this dust settles than I do his rookie season. He is a guy that I think I'm going to just stay away from as far as redraft leagues go for this year. Jonathan Mingo going to Carolina to play with Bryce Young. I like this. He can play inside, play a little bit outside. They're still kind of revamping the passing game for this Carolina offense. Young quarterback, which is going to limit Mingo's success here in year one. But nonetheless, he's worth the stash in dynasty redraft leagues. Yet again, I do think I'm going to kind of fade away because this Carolina offense and their passing attack, I do not think is worth taking up valuable roster space here for this season. Jalen Hyatt going to the New York Giants. I don't think this was the best landing spot for Jalen Hyatt. I think that he is in a situation where he is a little bit more electric than everybody else who's on the roster as far as deep throws go, but I don't know that they're going to have him do a whole lot besides be that deep threat. Almost like a Gabe Davis 2.0. So a lot of deep threats. I do think that there's a possibility he could lead the league in air yards per target. So if best ball might be a good format for Jalen Hyatt, maybe a late season as he kind of gets his feet underneath him for redraft leagues and in dynasty leagues. He's a second round dynasty pick. And I think you just kind of see how he develops as the Giants continue to grow here with Daniel Jones' newfound success. And then last but not least, Dalton Kincaid. This was a tough one for me because when the draft pick first came in from Buffalo, I didn't like it that much. I know some folks did. I didn't because of seeing how they used Dawson Knox. As I sit back on this, I like this pick a little bit more because Dalton Kincaid doesn't block. He's a more dynamic and electric Julius Thomas. It is kind of how I see Dalton Kincaid. Has better hands than Julius did because Julius had a case of the drops. but I do think Kincaid's going to be used more in different sets. They'll move him along those lines. I don't think that they're going to ask him to block a whole lot. I think they're going to work on that with him off to the side and during practice. But when it comes to game time, I think he's out there to be a weapon, and he's out there to take some pressure off of Stephon Diggs, maybe free up Gabe Davis a little bit more and keep those safeties honest as Dalton Kincaid goes up the seam or sits in that zone between the backers and the safeties, and allow those wide receivers on the outside to try and get behind the defense and make some hay here for Buffalo.
All righty. I like it. I've got the last group here. And so we're going to start it off with Anthony Richardson. He's heading to Indianapolis. We've touched on it a little bit earlier, but I do think that he landed in probably one of the best landing spot situations for a quarterback, a young quarterback there, with the coaching staff that's around him, right? That's been kind of the common theme that we've seen, the difference between success from some of these young quarterbacks and the busting side of some of these young quarterbacks is who's around to develop them. Shane Steichen, the head coach, has a track record of developing young quarterbacks, did it with Herbert his rookie year, did it with Jalen Hurts this last year, and I see that trend continuing. So I like the landing spot here for Anthony Richardson, and for fantasy purposes, absolutely. I think he's going to put up the most fantasy points for quarterbacks this year. His legs alone will get that done, and he provides that dual threat cheat code type of thing out there. Hendon Hooker, another guy that I got here as well. Hendon Hooker was a guy that I really liked the landing spot going to Detroit. It's a situation he comes in from, coming in injured, has the torn ACL. A lot of folks were thinking that he could have been a first-round pick had he not had that ACL injury. Goes to Detroit, has the situation where, again, a good coaching staff, good kind of environment bringing him into, and he can, probably compete with Jared Goff down the road for the starting position in probably another year or two. But Jared Goff easily that bridge quarterback to let Hendon Hooker get adjusted to the league and get fully healed up before he is ready to rock and roll, and before Detroit likely moves on from Goff due to salary cap type of hits there. That leads us into Zach Charbonnet. Seattle. I'm not a big fan of this landing spot for fantasy purposes. I thought this was one of those that he could have gone to a much better situation. It's one of those that it kind of muddies the water there a little bit in Seattle, who tend to like to run the ball a lot. So he'll see work, but upside is limited. Obviously, they took Kenneth Walker III last year, and again, they take another highly talented back here that actually caps the ceiling a little bit for Ken Walker and for Zach Charbonnet here. Roshan Johnson going to Chicago. Really like the landing spot here. Chicago loves to run the ball. They love to play that ground and pound game. We've seen that constantly out there. Roshan Johnson going into that, I think, was a little bit of an underrated back, simply from the standpoint of the other Johnson that he shared a backfield with down there at Texas, that being Bijan. And Roshan Johnson's a guy that I think will come in and can compete for some touches. Khalil Herbert, obviously kind of the clear favorite in that backfield there for the starting job. But I think that we could see Roshan potentially challenge that a little bit here as the season rolls along. Chase Brown to Cincinnati. This was a really interesting one. Cincinnati has needed running back. They let Samaje Perine leave during the offseason and through free agency. Joe Mixon has been rumored to be a cap casualty type of thing for several different points throughout this season. Plus, Joe Mixon also having some potential legal issues there. Chase Brown could be a sneaky play, especially if you're taking him as like a 4th round rookie draft pick here, or a late round fantasy draft pick. So worth a stash at that point. Deuce Vaughn, quick, shifty guy going to Dallas, dynamic playmaker who, is fairly undersized out there, but that hasn't seemed to stop him to this point here. And so going to Dallas, like the situation, we could probably see him challenge Ronald Jones, Malik Davis for, some roster, the roster depth chart there, to the point where we probably see him slot in behind Tony Pollard when it's all said and done. If Dallas doesn't do something crazy and bring another running back in here, we haven't seen them rule out the possibility of not bringing back Zeke on a restructured deal here, or signing him off of the waivers, or I'm sorry, the free agency market out there. So this is one of those that it's a proceed with caution for Deuce Vaughn and how this thing ultimately plays out. So for Dynasty, maybe worth a 3rd round dart throw, 4th round. I'm certainly throwing a dart there. Jordan Addison, Minnesota, love this landing spot, slots in right next to Jordan Jefferson, and Jordan Jefferson will certainly get the looks on this. Jordan Addison's not going to be the target monster there, and so it'll be very good for him, I think. Marvin Mims, love the landing spot to Denver. This kind of seems like a Sean Payton type of wide receiver here. Denver trading up to go get this guy, and Denver's got a murky wide receiver room where there's going to have to be some things clearing up. Marvin Mims, I don't think we'll see success this year, but long term, I think we will see him be a good wide receiver down in Denver, as well as just ultimately doing some good things there. Kind of gobbling up where I can get him in the middle of the 2nd in rookie drafts right now. Jaden Reed, a guy that we didn't necessarily see going this high to Green Bay, but Green Bay investing in wide receivers coming in for Jordan Love there. This is a guy that probably slots in 3rd, can work his way into 3rd on the depth chart. So could be interesting there, but not necessarily really investing much in the way of fantasy rookie capital there. And Sam Laporta going to Detroit. This is one here that I could kind of take it or leave it. Kind of fits into what Detroit likes to do here. But again, right, rookie tight ends typically take a little bit of time to develop here. And so I'm not necessarily spending much in the way of capital, maybe about a 4th round type of pick in rookie drafts on Sam Laporta for Dynasty. Guys, any thoughts further on where we called some of these landing spots, and if you like it, don't like it, disagree with somebody's take there?
I think the guy that I have a little bit of intrigue in is Evans going to the Rams, only because they don't have anybody behind
Cam.
Right? And so it does lead towards kind of a clear path of at least some work. Traditionally, Sean McVay offenses are one that still lean on a true lead back, but we saw the roller coaster of Cam Akers last year, right? He went from absolute bust to, really kind of revitalizing your playoff hopes and quite frankly, won some people fantasy championships. So depending on how that offensive line comes together, if Cam Akers stays healthy and his overall attitude, right? We saw some attitude issues there. Like, it just could lead towards volume. So I don't know that I would be that quick to write him off. I want him in the right place, right? Like, I'm not going to overpay for it, but I am willing to take a shot there if it's more of a luxury pick as I'm doing my rookie draft, if you will, to at least have a piece of an offense that still features a lead back. He might be the number 2, but injuries happen galore, and then he could be one of those kind of fantasy darlings, if you will, that come out of nowhere and help propel your team forward.
I like it. I like that one. Any other thoughts here on any of the other landing spots? Anybody we want to bring up here?
What are your guys' thoughts on Rashid Rice going to Kansas City there in the 2nd round?
I think this is again one of those that we saw last year, that the addition by subtraction type of thing, and I think you're going to see some of that play out again here, where he probably makes a lot of sense because he's one of the few guys that you'll probably see play a little bit more on the outside to it, whereas Kadarius Toney probably slots more into the role vacated by Juju this past season here. So I don't mind it, but it's intriguing. I don't know that I'm necessarily going out and heavily chasing that one though, just from the standpoint of, yes, it's Patrick Mahomes, yes, it's Kansas City, but right now for fantasy options, the only pieces I want in Kansas City are named Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and outside of that, I feel like I'm throwing darts.
Would you prefer it in best ball?
Sure, I'll take a Kansas City wide receiver late in a best ball draft.
Fair enough. I was trying to figure out where to slot him in because right now he's going second round ish in a lot of these rookie drafts. Kind of a mid second round point, and kind of the same sense. Like you get a piece of a high powered offense. Yes, they spread it around, but if Tony does or doesn't work out, obviously you have Sky Moore there, but Travis Kelce's not going to be there forever. Mahomes will be there still. And so what does this offense look like after Kelce, and can you afford to keep Rice on your roster to kind of wait and find out in dynasty formats, if you will?
Right. And
that's a long con.
Right.
For sure. But again, you're playing a 3 to 5 year window in dynasty. So
absolutely.
Am I willing to bet in 3 years that Travis Kelce's still playing football? No, not so much. But if the Chiefs are taking a wide receiver in the second round, I'm at least taking notice of that, right? Like it's different in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, but in the second round, yes, it's a luxury pick because the Chiefs are, consistently put together and performing well. But if they're still looking for weapons and grabbing that, it perks my ears up that, hey, they see, potentially Sky Moore and Rashid Rice as kind of their two guys going forward, and Tony is still kind of the wild card.
Fair. Yeah, I mean that's the thing is we did see them spend a second round pick on Sky Moore last year, and that was one of those that if you were banking on the Sky Moore pick, like you're just not happy about how that one really turned out for fantasy. We've also saw them, not that long ago, spend a second round pick on McCole Hardman. And granted, I get there were some other factors going into that. They were looking for somebody that could try and fill in a Tyreek role because of some, potential things that were going on going into that draft and into that season. But second round wide receiver picks lately for the Chiefs have not carried much fantasy weight on those.
I would even add that a first round running back pick hasn't really panned out the way that I think a lot of us would have envisioned that happening. So
yeah, notice how CEH was not in the list of guys I wanted for fantasy from the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm just looking
back. Jerick McKinnon back though.
Right. Thus muddying the CEH well even more.
Well, and they declined his 5th year too.
Right.
Yeah. So
it
is tough with Kansas City because that is such a good team. You've got to be. I mean, you do want to take notice as to what they're doing, but at the same time, like recent history is not a good indicator as to how successful a guy is going to be based on where he is drafted by that organization.
No, but you're playing landing spot, right? Like you're going to trust a Kansas City second round wide receiver over a New England Patriots second round wide receiver.
Absolutely.
I guess here let's just take that a step further there, and Jaden Reed, guy that was taken very early in the second round as well to Green Bay, a team that we've seen have prolific passing offenses. Again, quarterback change, get it. But who would you rather go with? Would you rather go with the Jaden Reed or would you rather go with the Rashid Rice?
Rice.
Okay.
Yeah, Rice. I trust the quarterback more.
And that's what it's offensive efficiency. Like I think Green Bay is going to use a lot of Aaron Jones, Corey Dillon, Jiminy Christmas, AJ Dillon. You still have Christian Watson coming back. Romeo Doubs is familiar with the offense. And not that there can't be a splash there, not that there's room for targets, but I trust Andy Reid and a passing offense more than LaFleur and what he would want to run in more of a run first offense.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, the wide receiver position is dependent on who is getting you the football. You can be the best wide receiver if you don't have a quarterback to get them the football consistently where they can make something happen, and it doesn't really matter, right? So when it comes to wide receiver, like that's what plays into it is who do you anticipate is going to be getting them the football a majority of the time. Look, injuries happen, right? Quarterbacks, it's almost becoming rare that we're seeing a quarterback start all 17 games now, because there's been a lot more quarterback injuries, despite the fact that the NFL is trying to put a bubble around them and make them play touch football versus everybody else playing tackle.
Unless you're Tua.
But right. But I just, that's where it comes down to with wide receiver for me is I need to make sure that this guy is going to be getting the football in an efficient manner from a quarterback that isn't going to throw it over his head. Same reason why like Zay Flowers to me is just like a non-starter, because I just don't see him getting the football enough from a quarterback that knows how to get and provide for receivers to get a lot of fantasy points.
Well, especially with all the other options that they've brought in there
Right.
in Baltimore, right? Like they
And
still,
never mind the fact that they
Antonio.
have a billion running backs too.
Right. On a team that's traditionally been run first, although offensive coordinator change, right? We've seen, right, like that was one of the last seasons that Odell had a good season, like full season, was with the Browns when Monken was there. Same thing too with, they brought in Antonio Brown. They brought in, a first rounder,
Zay Flowers.
Rashad Bateman was a former first rounder, and Mark Andrews in the passing game as well. So very interesting to see that whole deal shake out.
So as we sit here right now, where does this rookie class sit as far as, I'm going to throw out some names, and you can have the player that I list or the field of rookie wide receivers. Is that everybody on board with this one? Kind of see where they rank.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Let's start with Michael Gallup in Dallas.
Take the field.
Okay.
I would take Gallup, actually. Sorry.
You're going to take Gallup? Okay.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson.
I would take the field.
No, I'll take Deontay Johnson.
We've ruined your game, Kevin.
George Pickens.
So this receiving draft class or George Pickens on a fantasy production side of things,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lean Pickens. JSN is really the one guy that I think could challenge him.
I will go against
I think he's going to get muddled in that Seattle.
I will go field here.
Okay.
Tyler Lockett.
Field.
Yeah, field.
Tyler Lockett's going to have a couple of big blow-up games, and I want him on a basketball roster, but season long, I don't want him.
Fair enough. He consistently has 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think he'll probably be right about there again, but the problem is that, those 1,000 yards are going to come over the majority of those are going to come over 4 games.
Okay. Mike Evans.
I'll take the field.
Ooh.
Baker throwing to him. Oh.
Or Kyle Trask. They haven't figured that one out yet.
It's going to be Baker. I'll take Mike Evans. I like the known commodity, and I think Baker can support that. I would rather have Mike Evans than any of these receivers, any of these rookies.
Fair enough. Jerry Jeudy.
Field. I'm so done with him. I'm sorry. That's that Denver fan of me. I know.
What I'm trying to do is, right, I'm trying to get guys that are going to fall what we would think is somewhere in that 15 to 30 range, right? Like when it's all said and done with, that tail end of wide receiver 2 territory, top end of wide receiver 3.
Right. I'm going to take Jeudy over the field. I think the fact that Sean Payton's in town, we will see a much different game plan and execution of a game plan.
But you don't think that Mims kind of replaces that?
No, I don't think so at all, because Mims, what I think you're going to have happen there is you're going to have Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick playing on the outside there, and you're going neither one, and you're going to be able to bring Mims in to be a burner on that and really play a gunner type of role. into that thing. And I think Mims is probably more of a replacement for KJ Hamler than he is for Jerry Jeudy, right? Like two completely different skill sets. Yeah. Marvin Mims is a get downfield, 20 yards down the field, find your guy. Jerry Jeudy is an executioner when it comes to running routes and can be found in the short and intermediate deals. So,
quick sidebar. Was that the end of your game? That was a fun game.
Let's do that some more.
Sidebar. I saw some things on social media again today. 40 years ago today, John Elway became a Denver Bronco, and they were showing highlights of it. And granted, I was much younger for all of Elway's tenure in Denver.
Even a stain on the bed sheet 40 years ago.
Not 40 years ago, no, but I remember him playing, obviously.
I was gonna say that predates me.
But man, just to see that dude sling a football, like holy crap, could that guy throw a football? And it is
that might be the best 30 for 30, by the way.
Yes, the Elway to Marino 30 for 30. Yeah. Yes, that was phenomenal. But yeah,
great draft class, that 83 draft class too.
Yeah, but you'd sit there and you'd see interviews with these receivers and things like that. Receivers couldn't catch the ball with their body.
Hurt their hands.
They couldn't catch the ball because it would knock the wind out of them. With the pads on, he threw the ball so hard.
I implore you, find that the Broncos put it up on like their socials today. I implore you to find that video and watch it, and just watch how effortlessly that man throws a football 60 yards. Like it is unreal. And the other thing that I couldn't help but notice during that was he would do I'm left-handed, but he would do a ball tap and how much that would get just admonished by every talking head on every draft special leading up to the draft, because he would do a ball tap before he just uncorks a 60-yarder. And how that would be a wasted motion in today's NFL. And I was just like, look, it worked for John Elway. Like, maybe it's because it worked for John Elway. We let it work for John Elway. We don't let it work for other people. But my God,
because to this day, right? Elway's still in through the height of their career, right? I think Elway's arguably in the top 5 of the hardest thrown footballs.
Yeah,
right. Through kind of the prime, right? I think Rodgers could be up there. I think Matt Stafford could be up there. I think Josh Allen could be up there. There might be one other that I'm forgetting, but Elway still sticks out as, Favre to some extent, but just as far as the velocity on the ball, like you're right, Elway just him and Rodgers, right? Rodgers has that same effortlessly wrist flick because he gets his hips into it the right way, and it's just and the ball is just
poetry.
Gone, right? It's so fun and just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I'd still take John Elway as my top on the hardest thrown ball, but
fun. It was fun to see that. It was very fun to see that.
Yes.
Oh, a time when the Broncos were fun. Perhaps this year. Let's draft, shall we?
Yes, let's draft.
Let's draft.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get over in here into some mocking. And as soon as I get that rocking and rolling there we go. We're going to make this thing work.
I can tell you before we get into this, and Derek, I don't know if you have any special rules that you want to get into about this. What the reason this is a super flex that we're playing here?
It is a super flex. Rookies. It is a 3-round rookie dynasty mock draft. There we go.
And because I am starting, we are essentially starting from scratch here, right? Like we're just basically trying to put our teams together based on these rookies, right? I have no other players to base my decision-making off of.
Correct. You're basically just sitting the board as it lies, best available, how you would draft it type of thing. Pretend that you've gone through and you're a championship caliber team across the board, right? Like you're drafting all of these almost as their luxury picks and how you would go through and draft best available. type of thing, right? Like, and part of the reason we're doing this too is to kind of see how some of those things might have changed, because we did several mocks leading up to the draft, and now landing spot. How does landing spot change some of that? I know for me that certainly changed, some of these guys, especially when you start getting into the mid to late part of the first.
I would agree with that. But I can tell you, I am picking at the 101, and my pick will not change.
You're on the clock anymore. All right.
No, I'm not on the clock anymore.
So, and this one here goes very much on how you would kind of expect it, right? Bijan comes off the board at 101. Great pick, Alex. Then Anthony Richardson comes off. Bryce Young comes off. CJ Stroud comes off. This is very similar on how I've seen just about every Superflex dynasty that I've been drafting on so far is Bijan, and then pick your quarterback type of thing there. I purposely picked the 105 so that I didn't have to get into my wide receiver debate that I've been constantly having to have, drafting at the 106, 107, 108, seemingly in every one of my leagues that I'm going on right now. So I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs.
Fair enough. So Gibbs, really kind of I won't say shoe in, but in every 4 leagues, I'm drafting rookies so far. I think Derek, you're in 4 as well. And all 4, if you want Gibbs, you have to get the 106 or sooner. Like, he's just not there after 106 in any of the leagues that I've been looking at. And then the wide receiver fallout comes, right?
Much like we saw in the actual NFL draft, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Of wide receivers.
Yes. So JSN, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. I would argue that I would take Addison over Johnston based off a landing spot and where I think that's going to go. And I would also argue that I would not draft Zay Flowers in the first round going to Baltimore. I just do not like that. So that being said, coming up into this team, kind of a luxury pick. So what I'm going to do here is I think Zach Charbonnet is going to challenge Kenneth Walker for touches. They're in Seattle. We know that they want to run the football. They want to control the clock. Running backs in Seattle tend to get injured, so I'm going to take an early piece of that to circumvent any injury concerns I have.
So after you take Zach Charbonnet, we have Will Levis going and Devon Achane going. And honestly, I'm looking at this first round. That's got to be how they're all playing out, right? Pretty much.
You see Kincaid sneaking up in that first round for some tight end needy teams,
sure,
who are really buying into that Buffalo landing spot. But this lays out how I would think of it, right? If I'm ranking these guys, this lays out pretty close to, where I would have them all ranked as far as their landing spot.
So best available right now, according to the old application here, it is Dalton Kincaid, but I like this idea of taking Kendre Miller because of the possibility.
I like it. So Kendre Miller comes off the board, right? Alex's pick, and then Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, back-to-back tight ends there. Then Rashid Rice comes off the board, a guy that we spent a fair bit talking about earlier on in the show, and leaves me to a point where this is one of those that it gets kind of tough for me on this one. It's kind of when you get in the middle of here. Jonathan Mingo, like the upside there. Marvin Mims, love the upside there. If you're a quarterback needy team, Hendon Hooker is there, and you know that he's not coming back to you in the third. But I have gone a whole lot of Marvin Mims in this location, so I'm going to change gears here a little bit, and I'm going to take the Jonathan Mingo in this pick.
All right, so Hooker goes right after Derek was talking about him. Tajay Spears, who I've seen fall all the way to the back end of the second, which I have very much enjoyed that if I've been drafting there. Tank Bigsby, I'm not sure why he's going so high. And then Rashawn Johnson to Chicago. A lot of people like him there in kind of that mid to late second round area. So now we have some choices here. Josh Downs is on the board. I know some people who really like Josh Downs. I don't like the pairing with Anthony Richardson, so I think that downgrades Josh Downs. Marvin Mims is a possibility there with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson in the Denver offense. But here's what I've been doing this back end of the second round. because this is a guy I know who will not get back to me. And I have been picking up Cedric Tillman here in the back end of the second because I like his upside being a true being one of the guys who can play a true X when developed and given the chance.
Very good. After the Tillman pick, Josh Downs goes, then Jaden Reed goes. I'm back on the clock here. Mims still on the board. I'm a little surprised by that. And honestly, I was looking at a Jalen Hyatt here, and faced with this decision of Mims or Hyatt, I kind of like the idea of the person distributing the football a little bit better in Denver than the one distributing the football in New York, the blue team in New York. So I think I will go Marvin Mims here.
That would have absolutely been the way I would have gone, Alex, was with the Marvin Mims there, especially since I had debated that at the 205.
Yeah.
So right after that, Jalen Hyatt goes, Keyshawn Butte goes, Luke Musgrave also goes, and sitting here in the third, lots of different options that we can go with here. Sam Laporte is a guy that we could potentially take here. Likely we'll see some interesting playing time there. Chase Brown's a guy that could go, right? Like I mentioned him a little bit earlier on with a very limited backfield in Cincinnati there. Zach Evans is a guy that we highlighted on, but Israel Abaconda is a guy that I kind of really like in this spot. The landing spot might not be great playing behind Breece Hall, but Breece Hall coming off that injury. So I'm going to take the potential upside there for the rookie.
I like that pick a lot, knowing how Hackett likes to implement that 2 running back course. Israel Abaconda is kind of the A.J. Dillon, right, feature for what this Jets offense would be. I think Breece Hall is more of the Aaron Jones factor, a little bit more dynamic than Jones, but still I think that's how that pairing plays out. So with Breece Hall coming off of an injury, I like this pick a lot. So following that, big run on tight ends.
Holy cow.
Laporta, Darnell Washington, Schumacher, and Strange all go. And that leads a lot of options here. So the real question is, do you want a Chase Brown or a Zach Evans, right? They're going to be number 2 backs. Joe Mixon has some legal issues. We're not quite sure how things are going to shake out with Cam Akers, as we touched earlier with the Rams. So as this sits right here, I am going to go with Chase Brown just because I like the high-profile caliber that the Cincinnati Bengals are right now, and I trust that offense and the way that they've been functioning the last 2 seasons a little bit more than how anemic the Rams were even before the Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford injuries.
All righty, and then right after that, Deuce Vaughn and Tucker Kraft go to close that out. What do you guys think?
Do a 4th round here and have some good players left in the 4th for rookie dynasties.
Yeah, lots of really good players there. Zach Evans, which we've talked up a little bit. Eric Gray's a sneaky kind of play there.
Especially if Saquon goes down, misses any bit of time, like that's not a bad deal. And they're still working on a contract with him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't think Saquon hasn't signed his franchise tender, as far as I know.
So a guy who we haven't talked about, right? He wasn't on our quick breakdown. He wasn't here on the draft board, but he is a guy that I like as sneaky late upside in rookie drafts is Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals. He was dinged up at Stanford a little bit, but he is a very, very good route runner. He is a guy who finds ways to get open, and he does provide a bit of size at 6'2", 209 pounds. So he's not quite that the smaller, shifty player like the Andy Isabellas or the kid out of Purdue that they drafted a couple of years back.
Rondale Moore?
Yes, Rondale Moore. So I like this, gives a true kind of why to this offense. So he is a guy that I am definitely targeting late third round if those running backs were gone, or if I can get him in the fourth, that's even better. But he is a guy I do like to target late in rookie drafts.
Yeah, the one that kind of surprised me was Brenton Strange going in the third, the tight end from Jacksonville. That's a guy I've been liking to target in the fourth round there, right? Like he's a guy that's not going to get much fantasy production, if any, this season. Evan Ingram's still there on the franchise tag. And so this is one of those that you're playing him for more year 2, year 3 of his career, which is typically what you're doing on tight ends anyway. But I do like the upside of a Brenton Strange, 2 to 3 years down the road for dynasty purposes.
The last pick of the draft is the one that has got me scratching my head. Like Tucker Kraft, fine player, right? But that's a very crowded tight end room in Green Bay, considering that his teammate Luke Musgrave was taken not 10 picks before, not even 12 to 8 picks before. So Tucker Kraft, that's an intriguing one. I wonder if he is going that high in some other places, because it just doesn't. That one doesn't make any sense.
No, I've seen him.
I think which stinks, because a good player. Just a curious. It was a curious selection by Green Bay when they made it, and it's a curious selection in this draft.
Right, you take tight end in the second round, you take tight end in the third round, and you take wide receiver in the second round. So yeah, no, very, very interesting way that shook out there. Any other thoughts here on the mock, or anybody else we want to hit up?
I do think it's interesting that once you get past these 5, really the 4 quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round, that it is a pivot. And if you're not in the running for one of those 4 quarterbacks, you've got to look elsewhere to get your production. If you're picking in that back third of the first round and Levis goes, Hooker is not worth taking in the first round there. You're going to have to pivot, because that you're not going to get one of those top 3 if you're picking past number 5 or number 6.
Right. No, and I've seen Hendon Hooker, very consistently be middle of the second to end of the second in every draft I've done so far, where people realize that, hey, it's a bridge deal, and he's got to try and overtake Jared Goff, coming off of a great season and having really shown some things in the organization there. And Will Levis, definitely kind of fallen into that late first for the most case. I've even seen him fall all the way into the second in some cases there, just depending upon how the teams are set and how the rosters shake out there.
You mean to tell me that Will Levis, expected to go in the first round, fell all the way to the second in a fantasy draft? How in the world could a guy who was expected, who had a 0.1% chance of not being drafted in the first round, fall to the second round?
I don't know. Yeah, it was interesting though. I was actually
art imitates life.
Yes. I was actually the narrative on that one. I was really, really hoping that Will Levis fell and Seattle went, well, we're going to take him here as our bridge, because at least if nothing else, you've got a guy there that can mentor him on, what it feels like to fall out of the first round into the second.
Very true. Okay. Parting thoughts. If you are Joey Porter Jr., and specifically Joey Porter Jr.'s agent, how hard are you fighting for first round money, since you were the 32nd pick, which is technically a first round pick, even though you went at 32 overall at the top of the second round?
So I can understand the point, right? Like, hey, I'm the 32nd pick, and in years 2022 through whenever they expanded the draft, whenever we've gotten to 32 teams, this has always been a first round pick. The problem is that it would not have been the first round. It was not like Pittsburgh moved up a slot in the first round because Miami forfeited the first round pick. This is still a second round pick, which I totally get the point by Joey Porter Jr.'s agent to try and get his guy the most money possible, right? But the NFL and the NFLPA
his contract though because of it, right? Like, is this a
point
of contention going into?
I doubt it. Not with the history that the family has with the organization and the owners.
Business. It's what his dad's going to tell him.
I understand that.
I think he's the last person to sign out of this rookie class. Like, I will call that right now on the show. Joey Porter Jr. will be the last rookie to sign his rookie deal because they will be arguing the difference between first round and second round money, even though it's one pick difference.
But even by NFLPA standards with the collective bargaining agreement, he's not going to be eligible for the fifth year option because he was not a first year.
This isn't about the fifth year option. This is about the base and guaranteed.
Right.
And the difference between being 32 in the first round in a normal year. And
I would have to see the language of the CBA.
It would be interesting, but
we have precedents for this in the past, right? Like New Orleans had to forfeit, I believe, a first round pick for the Bounty Gate type of thing, right? Like,
it's happened.
We saw that one. Whoever was taking first in the second, like we didn't see them get the first round money thing. New England forfeited the 2016 pick over the Deflate Gate type of thing there. And can we think of a different name for it? Is that where you're going?
The Watergate was a damn hotel. It had nothing to do with an actual gate. Like, that's what drives me nuts about this.
Deflate Gate didn't have anything to do with the gate.
Neither did Bounty Gate. It all stems from the Watergate scandal, which happened at the Watergate Hotel.
It's just fun. It's fun. It's fun.
I didn't realize that was going to be the thing that set
our history. Yes, we need to understand our history.
But at the same time, too, right? It was the Watergate scandal, so it's.
I get it, but it was named
synonymous
after a hotel that was Watergate. It wasn't.
It's
it wasn't
synonymous
a water
with scandal. It's synonymous with scandal.
I know, but it wasn't a water scandal, so it shouldn't be a bounty scandal, and it just gets gate thrown onto it because it was the Watergate Hotel.
Tell me your feelings on Spygate.
Also, has nothing to do with the Watergate Hotel. I just wish we'd come up with something. We as a society can do better.
Yeah.
Alex, that's your task there over the next next months and years there is to
it's
change
too big
that.
of a task. I'll just keep talking about fantasy football if that's okay.
All right, let's do that then. All righty. Well, guys, any additional final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No. Enjoy the drafts, right? Those of you who partake in early rookie drafts after this is over, enjoy. As always, if you have questions, let us know. We're more than happy to help out and at least lend an opinion. If you're stuck between two players and not sure where to go, hit us up. We're happy to help.
Absolutely. Alex, any final thoughts out there?
Enjoy May, everybody. There's a lot of good fun sporting events this month.
Very true. Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for us. Make sure that you're tuning in here. We're going to start getting team breakdowns going here real quick, fast, and in a hurry. That is just on the horizon here. So make sure that you're heading over to the YouTube channel, clicking the subscribe button. That way you get all of those player breakdowns, player profiles that we do for y'all out there. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Make sure you hit up that YouTube channel, click subscribe. Have a good one, y'all. Be safe. Toodaloos.